Hey guys, Alyssa Pal here. We are here today to talk about vocal nodes. As a voice teacher, a lot of people ask questions about this. It's one of the biggest concepts that comes up in lessons, especially if someone is asking about them or is asking how to avoid them. So today I'm here with Lauren Jackson. Tell us a little bit more about what you do, your involvement in music, so on.
Sure. My name is Lauren, and I've been a singer my entire life. I started singing when I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old and continued through high school and college and beyond, musical theater, a cappella, the works, you name it. So, and I had vocal nodes, and I actually had them removed twice. So I call myself not an expert, but I've had some experience.
Not far from either.
Not far from it.
Let's get to the questions,
Yeah.
shall we? So what would you say when you're asked, like, what are nodes? What is your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, the way it was described to me that I think makes the most sense is it's your vocal folds will develop calluses that prevent them from, it's a weird visual, but they kind of glide onto each other and it prevents them from doing that. So yeah, vocal calluses.
When you had them, tell us a little bit more about what that was like. When did you first have them? I know you mentioned you might have had them multiple times.
Yeah, I actually had them as a child, like when I got them removed the first time when I was 5. And that was a different situation. That was from reflux, which is another common way people can get them. And then I got them removed again in high school from overuse from singing because I was in theater and a cappella and madrigal singers. And so just that much use of my voice and not being smart about it led to the eventual high school nodes that had to get removed too.
So you were 5 when you first got them, and you said that was caused by reflux.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you were involved in at that age when you were younger that could have contributed to it, or was it solely just the reflux?
Solely the reflux when I was a child, and that was a pretty severe situation, not super common. Other people, like reflux can contribute to it because it literally burns your vocal cords, and it's a pretty common affliction for people. But I would say most adults aren't having such bad reflux that they're burning their vocal cords. So, but it's something to think about if like you're experiencing nodes or like vocal fatigue and you do know that you have a lot of reflux or GERD, then it could be contributing to the problem. Basically, it's any of that like heartburn that people experience, usually related to food. That acid can literally burn your vocal cords if it's too prevalent or too present. So that's what happened to me as a kid. And then it never really went away. So I'm assuming that contributed as an adult, but it was mostly the overuse.
Was it caused by, like you said, food? Is it your diet? What else contributes to that?
To reflux, it's mostly diet. I also had like a medical condition where my stomach lining comes up into my esophagus, which is pretty gross, but that just meant that the stomach acid was going literally up into my esophagus and not getting stopped. Other people who have GERD, it's usually brought on by diet entirely. Anything that's an acidic food, anything that causes just that overproduction of stomach acid. So that can look different for different people. For some people it's garlic, some people it's citrus, some people it's milk. Like it can be really anything. So if you notice that when you eat something you get that heartburn, you might want to cut back on that a little bit just because it'll be more comfortable for you, and then you won't also have the reflux damaging your vocal cords.
As a 5-year-old, were you aware that this was a problem? What symptoms did you have? How did it come up for you?
My voice was wild as a kid. I basically had almost the voice I have now, like more gravelly. Like everyone makes the joke, like you sounded like you smoked a pack a day when you were 5 years old. I lost my voice all the time. And kids are always like running around screaming. It felt like I would have one play date and I wouldn't be able to talk for like a week because my voice was so tired. So I think having that abnormal of a voice as a child was what clued them into, okay, she has more damage in her esophagus and on her vocal cords than we thought.
So what is it that at the age of 5, when you first got it, you or your family, how much of it was you saying, look, something's wrong here. Like, can you guys take me to the doctor?
Yeah. So, I mean, at 5, I think I was just kind of living my life, not paying much attention. But my parents were noticing that I was losing my voice all of the time. And they were already monitoring my reflux. So I think one day my parents just asked my doctor, hey, does this have something to do with her voice sounding like that? And I think the doctor also noticed, hey, that's not normal for a kid's voice. Let's go ahead and do a endoscopy. And so they did the endoscopy, found that my vocal cords were severely scarred and calloused and had the nodes. And that's when they decided, let's go ahead and remove those, because they said if she continues on like this with this much damage this young, she will permanently lose her voice. But they didn't give me like a by a certain age, but they just said you can't let this kind of damage build up, especially this young in life. If you've got a kid, or if you're a kid that is talking like that or experiencing a lot of vocal fatigue, because that's really not normal, it's worth looking into, because it can cause long-term implications for whether or not you become a singer. They didn't even at the time think I would ever be a musician.
Yeah.
They were just worried about my speaking in general. So
I'd love to hear, how was it the same versus different in high school as a 5-year-old, because I'm sure all age ranges are going to be a little curious to how that it might affect them or their child.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I will say, having gotten many endoscopies, it does not hurt. It feels weird. They numb your throat and everything. It's a weird feeling, but it is not painful. I think, honestly, when I was really, really little, they put me under, because I was 5 and it was hard to explain to me what was going on. So I wasn't awake for the procedure. I can't remember if it was just like laughing gas or if they actually put me under. But I don't think I was awake for the procedure. So I didn't know anything happened and left with a lollipop and felt fine. As an adult, they actually give you the opportunity to see what they are scoping while they're in there. And I was curious, so I wanted to see. Some people might not want to see. But again, they numb you. It's not a lengthy procedure. So the endoscopy itself is really just a quick look and gives them an idea of what's going on.
Have you ever seen that video of there's a video of Steven Tyler?
I didn't see the video, but I went to his doctor. His doctor is the one who did my procedure. So he was very pleased with that. Like, there were pictures of Steven Tyler everywhere. And gosh. Adele and like John Mayer, like all these people had gone to this doctor. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll be famous because I went to the same doctor, but hasn't happened yet.
Still time, Lauren.
There is still time. Yeah.
What about the actual removing of the nodes? What was that like?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a standard surgery. I went in, I was going to be under for several hours. So what they do essentially is shave off those calluses, which sounds so gross, but like, if you think about a callus on your foot or on your like outer body, you can just take that off and your skin regrows and there's no like bleeding or anything like that. So with your vocal cords, it's the same thing, where they're taking off that outer layer of the callus and then allowing your vocal folds to heal back into their sort of like normal skin or tendon or whatever they really are. So I can't remember how long the procedure itself took, but I knew that as soon as I woke up, there's no talking, there's no whispering, there's no speaking at all for a minimum of 2 weeks after the procedure. So you can imagine, as you're coming out of anesthesia, you're not like, oh, I remember that I shouldn't be speaking. So of course I like tried to speak a few times and everyone was like, no. And my parents had gotten me this whiteboard that I used to communicate, and thankfully cell phones were a thing at that point, so I could text. But yeah.
I'm wondering, what was it like emotionally for you, like that experience of you knowing that you can't talk for 2 weeks, like in your high school career? How did that affect your normal routine? What did you have to shift as a result? And what did it feel like for you at that age?
Yeah. So at the time, I was in a select choir. I was in this smaller choir. I was in an a cappella group. I was doing all these things. And so I was sad to be taking a break from all of that. Honestly, I think before the procedure, I thought it would be kind of funny. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to talk. I'll have this whiteboard. But through the experience, it was actually really difficult because people stopped kind of talking to me because they knew that I couldn't talk back. And as funny as the whiteboard was, after about a day or two, it wasn't funny anymore. And just people really didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks. I still went to all of my normal routines and events and went to rehearsals just so that I couldn't sit out of or couldn't get behind in what my fellow musicians were learning and doing. But not being able to actually participate was really difficult. And not knowing how my voice was going to sound on the other side of it was really something I don't think I gave enough thought to. I was just so excited to get the procedure because for so long, I would lose my voice after almost any big performance that I had, or it kept me from performing. And so I was so excited to get that piece fixed that I didn't think about what is it actually going to be like to not speak for 2 weeks, because that is a long time.
Yeah.
And then what is going to be the after effect? My voice is going to change. So it was kind of mentally taxing in that way. And once the 2 weeks was over, it's not like you can just go back to normal. You have to ramp up slowly and be very careful with your like fresh vocal cords that just healed. So it was a long recovery process from that standpoint.
So, like you said, one of the biggest factors for you when you were in recovery was wondering what your voice was going to sound like. So, how did it end up coming out in the end?
So much higher than it ever had been in my life. And I had always had this like rich alto, gravelly voice, and now I kind of still do. But right after surgery and for months and months after, I had this really like kind of light and high voice that I had never knew what to do with it. Like it took me months of like relearning, retraining to know how to best use that voice because I wanted to take care of it and capitalize on it. It's not like I suddenly became a soprano, but I did have this whole vocal range that I had never had before. So the temptation, of course, was to like blow it out and like belt all these new notes that I could never hit. But that wasn't what you were supposed to do. So it was much higher. It was much floatier, I would say, is one way I could describe it.
Okay.
And through repeated use and all of that, it's gone back kind of down to its gravelly state, but I no longer have notes. I'm an alto girl at heart. So yeah, it was really shocking.
Were you working with a vocal instructor at the time?
Yes, I was working with a vocal instructor. And again, her focus really was the recovery from the surgery. So what were ways that I could speak? What were things like, she had me rethinking coughing just in my day-to-day life. Well, yeah, she had like how to like, instead of glottal coughing or glottal pronouncing vowels, things like that. I think in one of our lessons, you were like, oh, you don't start your A's with, or I start all my A's with a little, and that was something she had taught me to not just go but to ha. So it was things like that she was working with me on to help the longevity of my new voice, so to speak.
So when you're referring to a glottal, can you tell us all what you mean by that?
Sure. So when you cough, for example, I won't cough on you, but you kind of do that. And every time you do that, you're slamming your vocal cords together. And that can cause friction and damage over time. So she was explaining how to more like push out air rather than having them slam together that way. So instead, trying to do a big breath out, like a instead of coughing. And again, there's something that starts with A, like apple or apple, which sounds ridiculous. Like not a lot of people say apple, but it's a much gentler way to treat your voice, especially in that immediate recovery.
Yeah.
I had to be very mindful of how I talked.
So another question I have is, how has it impacted you post-recovery? now that you're fully recovered? Do you still think about things? Are you still careful?
I mean, after that, I went to college and was singing a lot there. And I'd say I was really not as careful as I should have been if I wanted that voice that I had after surgery to last forever. I was singing a lot of jazz. I was singing in a lot of parties and like bars, and I was loud. And I at the time, I also wasn't working with a vocal instructor anymore. So I think I just got a little bit careless. But what was great was I still had a much more expanded range than I ever had before. I wasn't losing my voice every, couple of performances. And so the positive effects stayed in place, even though my voice has now settled again back into its sort of alto, gravelly way that I'm used to and that I really love. I still have those capabilities from the surgery that I didn't have before. So that took time.
Yeah.
I think you even heard a video of me singing in college and you were like, wow, you sound young.
Yeah.
And that's kind of I was younger, but also my voice was just sort of like higher, tighter.
Yeah.
A little bit different. So
one last question before we talk about vocal nodes in media. What would you recommend to anyone who suspects that they might have them, or they're not even sure like what to do next if they have symptoms? What's the difference between vocal nodes and like just normal strain?
Yeah.
Like, how would you tell someone that is like, oh, my voice feels a little bit strained, or it's hurting? Like, what signals to you like, oh, that you likely should see a doctor about vocal nodes versus that's just normal strain?
I would say, first of all, if it's recurring constantly, if it feels like you're taking every step you can to take vocal rest and you don't feel like you're overly using or straining your voice on a regular basis, but you're still having vocal fatigue, you're having trouble hitting notes that you can normally hit, and you're losing your voice frequently, that's a sign that it's more of like a lasting problem than just sort of a one-time vocal fatigue moment. I would say try first and foremost going on some vocal rest of your own. You don't need to stop talking for 2 weeks, but maybe take 3 days and really just pay attention to, and not sing and not push it, and drink tea and honey and stay hydrated and all of that. And if it feels like that doesn't fix the problem, go see an ear, nose, and throat doctor, because they can do an endoscopy, because there's also like a vocal polyp or a vocal hemorrhage is something that happens once but heals on its own.
Okay.
It's not a lasting node or anything like that, but they'll be able to tell you, okay, it looks like you damaged this just for now, or it looks like you've built up some damage that we're going to need to pay more attention to. And some people, like, nodes doesn't automatically mean surgery for everybody. You can go and get vocal coaching and sing and speak in such a way that allows them to sort of ease on their own if they're really small and at the beginning of their life cycle, so to speak. So there's steps you can take before surgery. So I would say try some vocal rest on your own, go see a vocal coach to learn some best practices, and then if it persists, go to an ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Awesome.
And get that endoscopy.
Yeah. What would you say is the one thing that you wish you knew going through your whole experience with vocal nodes?
I think I wish, I knew how difficult the recovery would be, and that my voice would have changed as dramatically as it did, because I was really not expecting that. I mean, I used to sing the national anthem at all the sporting events in my town. And I literally had someone come up to me after the first time I sang it after my surgery and said, I liked your voice better before. And I'm like, okay. Wow. Like, that was a blow to the confidence. So I wish I knew how much it was going to change things for me. And then I think in the longer term, I wish I had kept up with my like vocal hygiene better, so if that makes sense. Like, in college, I think I was just content to sing and party and do whatever and yell and all of these things, and I do think my voice has regressed a little bit because of that. So I think taking it more seriously afterwards would have expanded the lifetime of that nice high crisp voice.
Yeah.
So wish I had done that a bit more.
After the movie Pitch Perfect came out, and after a lot of movies, I think there have been some discussion around vocal nodes that has become there's a stigma I feel around it, and I want to hear how that has affected you and what you know about it. I also did want to speak on vocal fry for a moment under that same realm, because we all kind of hear about vocal fry, and what is your take on that and how it maybe is under the same umbrella as nodes? So what is your take there on the media side?
Yeah, I mean, when Pitch Perfect came out and they highlighted nodes, I mean, I think immediately myself and a lot of other singers were like, oh my gosh, someone's finally talking about nodes, because it can feel a little ridiculous, especially in singers circles, to constantly be on vocal rest and, oh, I'm sorry, my voice right now, I need to rest. It can feel like other people don't quite get why, or maybe they'll make fun of you. And so when it's seen in a movie like that, you're like, okay, that's what I had. And of course, they made it sound like that automatically makes you a bass. If you're a woman with nodes, you're going to become a bass automatically, which is just not the case. So I would say, like, representation was great to raise awareness, but it was also really misrepresented. Like, yes, my voice was a little bit lower, but I was by no means a bass after my nodes. So that was kind of funny. And yeah, I think like it gave people a reference point. Anytime I would say, oh, I have vocal nodes, their minds went to Pitch Perfect. So I'd have to kind of do a little like reframing, but at least they knew kind of what it was. So it was a double-edged sword a little bit there.
And what do you think about vocal fry?
I'm so guilty of it. I think when I'm being lazy, I fall, or not even just being lazy, but not thinking about it. Like, I fall into vocal fry very, very often, especially if my voice is already tired. It's an easier way to speak, or I guess it's perceived to be easier, because it does, my understanding is that it further tires out your voice and your larynx in general. But when you're already tired, it's so easy to just kind of vocal fry like that. So when I hear it, it almost hurts me a little bit, because I'm like, oh gosh, like in the long run, it sounds ridiculous, but to actually speak really lightly and really breathily and airy, that's what's going to help your voice recover, not falling into this kind of vocal fry. So we're all guilty of it. I think it's really easy to fall into, but now I try to have the mental cue when I hear myself do it to raise it up a little bit. So,
and even to in instruction, like teaching voice lessons, if someone ever says that they have like a strained voice, or they're preparing for an audition, they don't want to tire their voice, we always say, talk like this, just raise your voice a little bit. It's gonna sound a little crazy, your friends might ask what you're doing, but at the end it's gonna hopefully be worth it. Thank you so much, Lauren, for being here today and for talking about vocal nodes and for answering some of our viewers' questions about vocal nodes. Hopefully we could raise some awareness today about them. And feel free to comment your experience, like and subscribe for more videos about vocal health, vocal awareness, and exercises. Like subscribe. Stay tuned for more.
Impossible to obtain, I can sure try.